Right, so the arrest of Labour MP and West of England Mayor Dan Norris, resulting in his suspension from the Labour Party over allegations of the most depraved of crimes, are very much the actions of a party that has been caught out. Norris was one of Starmer's high-profile, supposedly high-quality candidates. Yet these allegations, which reportedly date back to the Blair era, have not only exposed the moral failings of an individual politician, but have also cast a damning light on the systemic corruption, factional favouritism and ethical decay within Keir Starmer's Labour Party. This scandal also comes at the worst possible time for Labour, just weeks before crucial local elections they're expected to struggle in, and you always wonder about the timing of such matters actually getting reported in the media. We saw this convenient timing when Boris Johnson became a liability. So is Keir Starmer's time as the establishment's chosen one similarly ending now too, I wonder, becoming more and more unpopular as he is? The public, already disillusioned by years of Tory incompetence and cruelty, now sees Labour, the supposed alternative, the supposed change, embroiled in yet another grotesque scandal involving one of its own, and they're not seeing any difference. Worse still, Norris is not an isolated case, as we've seen over the last several months certainly. He is merely the latest in a long line of Labour right-wing figures accused of serious crimes, raising urgent questions about Starmer's judgement, the integrity of Labour's selection processes, which were already mired in interference allegations, and whether the party, as it has become more right-wing, had become a home for more predators and political opportunists, rather than a vehicle for progressive change.
I'm here in Keynsham with Dan Norris, Labour's candidate to be the West of England Mayor. The choice in these elections couldn't be clearer. The Conservative Metro Mayor who's been invisible and failed to secure investment in the area, or Labour's Dan Norris. Dan will be a strong voice for the West of England, the voice they deserve. He'll invest in creating green jobs of tomorrow. He'll support farmers and local businesses. And he'll drive forward connectivity for the region, from buses to broadband. Vote for Dan Norris to be the West of England Mayor. Vote for Marvin Rees to continue his work delivering for people as Bristol Mayor. Vote Labour.
Right, so that was a piece of footage there that I'm pretty sure Keir Starmer would love to see buried in a deep dark hole now, but with social media there, it's always going to be on record, isn't it? And there he was, back in 2021, campaigning with Norris to become West of England Mayor. A strong voice for the West of England translates to being a strong voice for Starmer in Starmer's Labour, because that is how Labour selections under his leadership have gone. Green jobs, Starmer spoke of in that bit of video, when now it's second runways at airports, and GB Energy turning out to just be another private investment scam. He'll support farmers and local businesses, he said there. Great stereotyping of the West of England there, Keith. And I can hear the laughter coming from both farmers after the inheritance tax debacle and small businesses going under or laying off staff as those national insurance tax hikes start biting. As for Marvin Rees there, well, Bristol abolished him and his post, so much for that. Dan Norris has been a classic example of the kind of politician who thrives under Labour's rigged internal selection system, loyal to the right faction, mediocre in ability, and now horrifyingly accused of abhorrent crimes. He was first elected as an MP in 1997 during the Blair landslide. Norris was a backbencher for the vast majority of that, with very little notable achievement, before losing his seat in 2010 to Jacob Rees-Mogg. His political resurrection came in 2021 when he was selected as Labour's candidate for West of England Mayor, the selection process that itself reeked of centralised control and factional interference. You see, Labour's centralised control freakery under Keir Starmer showed itself in Norris's mayoral campaign. One such story exemplifying that is worth raising being that of Bath Constituency Labour Party, or CLP as they get abbreviated to, the wealthiest Labour CLP in the country as it happens. They'd passed a motion in late 2020 to donate £3,600 of its own money to local food banks, homeless shelters and poverty relief initiatives. But Starmer's lot blocked it, threatening to block the release of any funds if the CLP were to vote to go ahead with it, and refer to the CLP to the party's governance and legal unit, the body that booted so many of the left out of the party. Well, the central party there blocking its own CLP from spending its own money on its own local worthy causes. Apparently, this sort of thing goes against the policies and principles of the party under Starmer, which you can well believe, actually. Instead, Labour demanded the CLP come up with a plan to raise funds for Norris's mayoral campaign, and once done, then the Central Party might consider letting Bath CLP spend some of their money on those less fortunate. Labour values under Starmer evidently only apply to the advancement of loyalists over the needs of vulnerable communities, and seemingly no matter what those loyalists may have done in the past, though we must assume Norris's actions were unknown to the party at this time. You still find it hard to believe, though. And it doesn't say much of Labour's vetting processes either. But then belonging to the right faction seems to be the only thing that does matter as far as vetting goes. Now, with Norris arrested in relation to those much publicised crimes he is accused of, the public must ask, did Starmer's Labour know? Given the party's ruthless control over candidate selections, it ought to be inconceivable that no due diligence was conducted and that these things were not picked up on. And yet it's so believable that it wasn't. If Norris's alleged crimes were known, then Labour's leadership knowingly elevated a dangerous individual. If they were not, then their vetting processes are catastrophically negligent. Either way, Starmer's faction bears responsibility here somewhere. Now, Starmer's lot might be able to hide behind this as a one-off, if it were not so many other examples, and all from that same right wing of the Labour Party, that same right-wing faction. Norris is not an anomaly. He is part of a pattern of Labour right-wing figures linked to sexual misconduct, to abuse, to criminality. There was Ivor Catlin, the former Labour MP and chair of the Jewish Labour movement, who was arrested in January of this year on suspicion of child sex offences. There was Sam Gould, the aide to Health Secretary Wes Streeting just the other week, who was charged with indecent exposure to a mother and her child. There was former Labour MP John Woodcock, who now goes by Lord Walney after taking a peerage from the Tories, quit Labour in 2018 amid allegations of sexual harassment, quit the party seemingly to escape that investigation. There is currently serving Bermondsey and Old Southwark MP Neil Coyle, who was readmitted to Labour despite a sexual harassment warning and a racist tirade. There is slum landlord and Ilford South MP Jazz Athwell, who was selected as a Labour candidate despite an internal apparent cover-up of sexual harassment allegations made against him. There was former Chester MP Chris Matheson, who resigned after sexual misconduct findings, yet faced no meaningful consequences from Starmer's leadership. There was Thomas Dewey, a Labour councillor and organiser of the right-wing Luke Akehurst-led Labour First faction, who received a mere 150 hours of community service for possessing the very worst of indecent child imagery. This litany of cases, and more besides, reveal an undeniable truth, that it's the right-wing faction of the Labour Party and under the leadership of Keir Starmer that has repeatedly shielded abusers, harassers and criminals while purging left-wing members for far lesser offences. After all, who got booted out for being retrospectively belonging to an affiliated body the party didn't like? Who got thrown out for liking the Foo Fighters? Who got thrown out for liking a tweet by a Green Party MP? The party's disciplinary system is not about integrity, it is about power, and maintaining that power and control above all else, including crimes such as these, it would seem. Starmer's leadership has been defined by the systematic purging of left-wing candidates and their replacement with hand-picked loyalists. The parliamentary selection processes, combined with a craven weaponisation of boundary changes, saw left-wingers booted out so that right-wingers could take those seats, and we saw this happen the country over. From Sam Tarry losing out to Jazz Athwell, to Mick Whitley losing out to Alison McGovern, to Beth Winter losing out to Gerald Jones. The justification was always that these new candidates, or winning candidates, win being a stretch in many cases, were high quality. Yet as figures like Norris demonstrate, many have proven to be ethically and politically bankrupt, even potentially criminal. The left of the party, trade unionists, community activists, principled socialists, gone elsewhere now, they were sidelined in favour of careerists whose sole qualification seemed to be obedience to Keir Starmer. And what is the result of that now? A Labour Party filled with the mediocre, often morally dubious representatives, whilst talented grassroots candidates were excluded and now lost to the party completely in many cases. Norris's arrest, therefore, is the logical endpoint of such corruption. When parties prioritise factional loyalty over merit and integrity, they become magnets for the worst kind of people. Unsurprisingly, the far right, particularly Reform UK supporters I've noticed, who readily jump on comments saying vote Reform, have seized on Norris's arrest to gloat themselves. Many are under the misapprehension that Labour is a left-wing party, but compared to them, well, pretty much everything is left-wing, isn't it? They're the far right. But I'm not about to let them off with their sanctimony here either, because Reform UK has its own parade of scandal-hit candidates, not least in just the last few days. 2 candidates suspended going into the local elections in as many days. with Miriam Thomas being suspended after Islamophobic social media posts emerged claiming Islam to be a false religion, which, given it shares its origins with both Judaism and Christianity, is as ignorant as it is racist. And another Reform candidate, Stephen Hartley, was dropped after making claims that Jimmy Savile was a working-class hero and his role model. Well, that detonates any stories that Reform UK characters might be coming out with relation to Keir Starmer and Jimmy Savile going forwards, doesn't it? Nigel Farage's boasts about Reform's robust vetting, the highest standard of vetting of any party, as he's claimed, have completely collapsed under just the most basic of scrutiny. So look to your own first if you're going to criticise others. The arrest of Dan Norris, with judicial process due and these accusations remaining allegations at this point, is still a political indictment of Starmer's Labour. A party that rigs selections and protects its own whilst expelling socialists is not fit to govern. It's not democratic in any way, and this arrest, combined with those numerous other examples I've mentioned here and more, make a mockery of due diligence within the party under his leadership. As local elections approach, voters are going to have to ask themselves, can they trust a Labour Party that has repeatedly put power before principle, power before us the people, party before all else? And the answer for many is going to be a resounding no, isn't it? There needs to be an independent inquiry into how Norris was selected despite his alleged crimes, which needs to cover all candidate selections that have been going on under Starmer's leadership. Were these crimes known about, these allegations? What about all the other allegations of interference by the Central Labour Party in candidate selections nationwide as well? We know about so many cases. Was due diligence done, or was it just the right Starmery sort chosen regardless of background? It's an uninvestigated national scandal that he's combing over now more than ever. I would also suggest the end of factional purges and restoration of democratic candidate selections, but who on the left is genuinely still left in Labour for this to make much of a difference anymore? Labour is dead. Starmer has killed it. The party started by a Keir is being ended by one as well. But populist movements led by and funded by millionaires who are absolutely no better in these stakes, like Reform UK, are not the answer either. They're just more of the same. Of course, we know Starmer's authoritarianism extends far beyond his own candidates and how they get selected. It extends to all of us if we dare protest. But despite arrests, some will not back down. Namely, Youth Demand, for example, as the fallout from the Met Police's raid on the Quaker Meeting House last week continued to be felt this week, heaping more bad news and more bad headlines on Starmer and co. So get all the latest details on that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't already done so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as supporting the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.